When I started baking, I quickly learned that the amount of flour I use could make or break my recipe. So I learned that the most accurate way to measure flour is to use a scale. Using a scale is the most accurate and most repeatable way to measure flour. But what if you're in a rush? What if you have a scale, you don't want to use it? Or what if you don't have a scale? Does that mean you shouldn't bake?
No.
So today I wanted to test out the different methods out there to measure flour, and we're gonna see how they compare to using a scale. For this exercise today, I'm going to measure all-purpose flour. And if you look at the packaging of your flour, so sometimes I have it on the side and sometimes I have it on the back. You're going to see how many grams of flour is in a quarter cup. To see how each method does with different measuring sizes, I'm going to do a 1 cup, a 1/3 cup, and I'm going to do a 1 tablespoon. I'm going to measure each size 3 times. As you can see, the measuring cups I'm using are very affordable. I got them from Walmart for maybe less than $5, so I'm not using any special measuring cups for this experiment. My measuring scale, I got this from Amazon, so I'm going to put the link below if you want to check it out or if you want to get one for yourself. I have my notes here that I'm going to keep track of all the measuring methods, and I don't really know what they're called, but when I'm editing the video, I'm going to write down the correct name, if there's even a name for it. But I'm just using the methods that I've seen, like I used to do in the past, or I've seen people talk about, or I've seen people do. The first method I'm going to be trying is a packing method, and honestly, this is a method that I used when I just started baking, and like I honestly had no idea what I was doing. Because the measuring unit is in grams, we're going to make sure that our scale is showing grams as well. And I'm just going to go ahead and tear my scale so I can zero it out. So basically what I used to do is I would just like put the cup in the flour bucket or flour container, and then I would use my clean hands, of course, to dust off the flour to kind of get like a level amount of flour, and then I would use it. So that first cup, I measured 148 grams of flour. Third cup, but this next method, you basically use a spoon to fill in your measuring cup. And you want to try not to pack, so you just want to very gently fill it in. And once your cup is almost filled, you want to use a knife and just brush it off. So the last method, I don't know if anybody does this, but usually using a spoon to get as much flour as you can. And instead of overpacking it, we're just going to use a knife to level it up and measure. All right, so I have all of the data I just collected in a spreadsheet. So again, we have the 3 different methods. We have the dip and pack, we have the spoon fill and level, and we have the dip and level method. And then we measured 1 cup, 1/3 of a cup, and 1 tablespoon. So I just wanted to look at the data first to see how repeatable and what the difference between the mean and the max measurements are. So for the dip and pack, we can see here that the difference between the max and the min is about 8 grams, which is a lot. It's over a tablespoon of flour. And then for the spoon fill and level method, for 1 cup, the difference is only 4 grams, if I'm doing my math correctly. And then for the dip and level, the difference between the max and the min is only 5 grams. So we can see here for the spoon fill and level method, the numbers are more closely together, the measurement. And then we have the dip and level, and then we have the dip and pack. And then for a 1/3 cup, it's actually surprising here that the measurements are close together or closer together, which makes sense because if we're measuring less flour, that means we're filling up less volume, so that means the error will go down. So for a dip and pack, for a 1/3 cup, the difference between the max and the min was only 3 grams, and then for spoon fill was only 1 gram, and then for dip and level, it's only 2 grams. And then for 1 tablespoon, which I guess is expected because we have the least amount of flour, there's a least amount of variation between the different measurements. So there's like no difference. They're all the same for dip and pack. And then for spoon fill and level, there's only 1 gram, which is not too bad. And then for dip and level, there's no difference. They're all 8 grams. I did a little cheat sheet table here. So 1 gram, if you do the math, or 1 cup of flour is 120 grams if you do the math, and then 1/3 of a cup is 40 grams, and then 1/16 of a cup, if you didn't know, is 1 tablespoon, is 7.5 grams of flour. And then I like having visuals green, red, yellow. So I have green here for if the measurements were about 2.5 grams within what we expected. And then for yellow, it's if it's greater than 2.6 or greater than 2.5, so that's 2.6 to 7.5 plus or minus. We have that as yellow, so that's about 1 tablespoon. And then if our measurements were greater than 7.5 or less than 7.5, we have that as red. So I also have it grouped into 2 different buckets. So I have a mean, just to see on average like what we would get, and then I have a sum. So if we were making a recipe with all of the flour we measure, how off would our recipe be? So let's just go ahead and start looking at the mean. So for dip and pack, again with the color coding we have going on, so on average we had an extra 25 grams of flour. So that means your bread is going to be really tough. It's going to be hard to knead. Very starchy, just very dense. And then for spoon fill and level, we have actually less flour, not too much less, about 1.3 grams, which is not too bad, you know. And then for your dip and level, we had almost 6 extra grams of flour, again, which is not too bad. So for 1 cup, the best method is spoon fill and level. And then, you know, just to make this quicker, you can see here for all the 3 methods for spoon fill and level is green for all 3 measuring cups we use. So for a 1/3 cup, we just got an extra 1.3 grams of flour, which is not too bad. And then for a tablespoon, we got 0.2 grams less, again, which is very negligible. And then for the dip and pack and dip and level, we got 3 grams more for a 1/3 cup, which is not too bad. And then for 1 tablespoon, we only got 0.5 grams, which again is not too bad. So what this is telling me is if I'm in a hurry, if I'm baking, if I need a tablespoon of flour, I can just use, you know, I can just put the spoon in and get a tablespoon of flour. But if I'm measuring a cup, a 1/3 of a cup, you know, the spoon fill and level method would be the closest to using a scale. All right, so let's go over here to the sum because I think this is really interesting. So if you're measuring 1 cup of flour, or rather 3 cups of flour using the dip and pack method, you're going to have an extra 75 grams of flour in your recipe. So imagine like your bread, your dough, your cupcakes will be very, very dense. So maybe that's how you've been measuring your flour. Like maybe this is an explanation as to why your cupcakes, your bread, whatever you're making is really dense. And then with the spoon fill and level method, we only had 4 grams less what we need in total, again, which is not too bad. I feel like I should change this to like green for total. And then for the dip and level method, we got an extra 17 grams of flour, again, which is not the end of the world. Again, here, just saying that the spoon fill and level method is winning here. So for a third of a cup, we got extra 4 grams of flour. Again, it's not too bad, so it's less than an extra tablespoon of flour. But for the 1/3 cup, for the dip and pack and the dip and level, we got over an extra tablespoon of flour. Again, it's not too bad. You know, it's just an extra tablespoon of flour. So for the 1 tablespoon for the dip and pack and dip and level, we got an extra 1.5 grams of flour, again, which is not too bad. And then for the spoon fill and level, we got an extra, or rather, we got less 0.5 grams of flour, again, which is not too bad. So just looking at this, I would vote. My vote goes to the spoon fill and level method for measuring flour. If you're not using a scale, you should definitely go ahead and use the spoon fill and level method to measure your flour. In worst case, you measure less flour. It's always easy to add more flour if we're making a recipe. Let's say you're making bread and your bread is very wet. That way you can add more flour. But if you add too much flour, are you going to add more milk, more water, more eggs? It's just really hard. So it looks like the spoon fill and level method is the winner. It was the most repeatable and also the closest thing to using a scale. The reason why the other methods were less accurate is because we packed in a lot of flour and we compressed them, we compacted them into a cup, which means we got a lot of flour into a cup. But with the spoon fill and level method, we didn't really compact the flour. So I used very light hand to put the flour into the cup using the spoon, and then I just used a knife to like gently level it up. And when I put in the flour, I didn't like make sure like all the cup was fully covered in flour, like the top was overflowing. I just made sure like I had enough in the cup, and then I just used my knife to level it up. So I just want you guys to keep that in mind if you do decide to use the spoon fill and level method when measuring your flour. I hope you guys learned something new today. This was definitely a fun video to film. And now I know if I'm in a rush or if I'm at someone's house and I don't have a scale, I'm going to tell them, hey, you can use the spoon fill and level method to measure your flour. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.